Welcome to another episode of Apes on Movies. I'm Janky Gorilla.
And I'm Dopey Chip.
Today, at long last, we're going to cover the spoiler-filled review of Annihilation. And with me, Dopey Chimp is going to share his fantastic views on the movie. So, Dopey, what did you think about the film?
I liked it for the most part. I think I was a little let down by the third act. It's not like I don't like the third act. I like the third act if it was in a different movie.
Okay.
I think I wanted the third act to be a whole movie, and I wanted an actual ending to the first 2/3 we got of this film.
That makes sense.
We've discussed this before. It's a movie that's very much in its own genre. It is sci-fi, but it's a dramatic sci-fi. It's not so much about the spaceships or the aliens or the weird element about the movie that makes it sci-fi. It's more of a dramatic piece. So it kind of finds its home, or at least it's trying to find its home with things like Blade Runner 2049, or movies along those lines. Minority Report.
The story is the center, and then the sci-fi is just that added visual element to kind of immerse you in a different world other than our own.
Yeah, I don't know that this movie quite hits all the beats that I wanted it to.
I feel the same way too in that sense. I thought it had a lot of potential, but and there were issues with how complex do they make the story versus how do they just kind of keep it on the more sci-fi shooter side of things, because that's more typical route anyway. And they settled more on the storytelling side, which I was thankful for a change. Yeah. But I think it did get a little more, not necessarily complex in a confusing way, but it just seemed like it itself didn't translate over as well in film because there was so much complexity to that ending, especially the ending. And
we go from a very sci-fi CGI situation for the first bit of the movie. With the last bit, Natalie Portman finds herself facing off against
almost like a mimic
of herself. And I agree. I thought it was very poetic. It just didn't feel like it fit with the rest of the movie. But I liked it. I liked that aspect. It was a more trippy kind of.
I enjoyed the third act the most.
Yeah.
And it took the first 2/3 of the movie to drag along to get there, and I'm glad I stuck with it. But the first 2/3, I really honestly wasn't as interested. But when the third act rolled around, it started off beautifully. It ended beautifully, and it took a lot of guessing. More so, it didn't spell it out for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The Shimmer basically, if you've seen the movie, you know that it affects people on different levels. A lot of times it's psychological, sometimes it's a physical level. I never saw consistency on how it affected certain people. Oscar Isaac's character came back,
He seemed to be. I honestly thought he was affected on a psychological level based on what he witnessed, not necessarily based on what the Shimmer itself did to him.
That's what I thought it too. By the end of the film, you get the idea that he's not exactly the same Oscar Isaac, and we'll get to that in a second. But for example, the medic, and I'm blanking on her name right now.
The one that was ahead of everybody. I can't remember who the medic was.
She was the one that was that went crazy. That was trying to kill everybody. I can't remember.
I didn't like her.
Whatever. But the point is that she went kind of crazy, and I'm not exactly sure why her, not the others. One girl just turned into a plant for some reason. It seemed like, and the psychologist also went crazy by the end. Felt like the only person who was unscathed up until the end was Natalie Portman, and that felt a little forced, like a little heavy-handed. She was the lead. Everyone had a different reason to be there. Everyone had a different psychological state, but none of them were unscathed. So I don't understand the pattern of how any of them ended up.
Yeah, and the only explanation I ever came upon myself was that their will to be there, their drive, and I think that Natalie Portman had the most drive based on the things that had happened in her past between her and her husband. She, at first, you think that she's going in there to avenge him or to find answers for his health, but I think it was more of a justification of her wrongs. She was trying to right her wrongs, and she was so driven to do that I think she kind of fought.
Sure.
Those
She had a that's a good point. She had a will to find answers, and it was driven by guilt.
Yeah.
It was driven by guilt. You know, spoiler alert, but the character, you find out throughout the film that Natalie Portman's character was having an affair, seemingly implied at least several months leading up to the start of this film. You find out that Oscar Isaac's character knew about the affair, at least on some level, and this was part of his reason for going into the Shimmer.
I think the theme of the movie that was expressed multiple times was self-destructive.
Right.
And I think he was the first to become self-destructive because of what his wife had done.
Right.
And then she becomes almost self-destructive. I mean, all those characters in some way were.
Yeah. The Natalie Portman you end up with at the end of the film leads you to believe that it might not be the one that originated. It also leads you to believe that the Oscar Isaac that you started off with was not the one that you saw return.
What I think was interesting is, and then this is another spoiler alert, is the husband, Cain, I think his name was Cain, last name, he was destroyed, and he was replaced by his mimic. That was obvious. So he didn't have a clue of what had happened in the past.
No.
However, Natalie Portman's character wasn't destroyed. She actually outsmarted her mimic. She left her mimic to hold a grenade of some sort. It was like a flashbang, or it was some kind of grenade. I don't know what it was, but she managed to escape as herself, but she felt, since her husband, that wasn't the real husband, that she could start new with him, but it was the same person that had those memories. So she had to move on with that guilt still.
Was that even the same Natalie Portman though?
I mean, that's what the movie implied. And I know the whole eye thing at the end. Like, there was a moment at the end where you see her eye kind of do a little swirl effect. Like, I still think her DNA was infused with all the other cells, and that still happened. Like,
and that's what I was getting at. Is that I don't like, they wouldn't do all that trouble to explain how the cell thing happened, but it appears that she seemingly just destroys the whole Shimmer with a grenade, which really bothered me. So I like the idea that they showed at the end that it did somehow live on. Yeah. Because it just bothered me that because I feel like that would have already been tried by this point. It's America; they would have already tried to blow it up. Yeah, right. You know.
But we're not trying to deter you from the movie. We're just trying to say you're forewarned that it's a movie of interest. It's a movie of storytelling, and it's got some ambiguity to it, but it also has some very strong themes that you have to pay attention to catch on to. So if you're a moviegoer of that type, it's for you. If you're looking for a blockbuster, shoot 'em up, sci-fi film, don't even go that way. It's not going to make you happy. You're going to walk out most. I think
that's something that we have to address at least a little bit. Is that this is no knock on the movie at all. I don't think this movie was marketed very well. If you look at the trailers and the TV spots for it, it gave you this like sci-fi thriller horror film.
It felt like Alien.
And it felt like it felt like Alien.
It was very intense.
It
and scary.
wasn't that. There in the movie there's maybe one or two intense kind of I wouldn't even say scary, but frightening or off-putting scenes. There's very eerie elements in a couple of scenes.
That has a lot to do with the mood and the music and everything. Kind of keeps you on that edge.
Yeah, but as far as there was never a moment that I felt
afraid.
Fear.
No, not quite. Yeah. The bear scene, however, was
that's what I'm talking about.
Freaky.
There's the eerie scene where
you can hear the girl's voice.
Gina Rodriguez. That's
there
her name.
Yeah.
Gina Rodriguez basically loses her mind and ties the rest of the crew up, and she's going to kill one of them because she thinks that they're betraying her in some way. And then this weird undead bear comes on the scene, and that was a creepy thing.
That was definitely the darkest moment of the movie, and it didn't end well for most.
It was one of those movies where the more time passes from viewing it, the less I want to recommend it.
I'm with you on that.
I don't think this one's going to have a lot of. I don't think it's going to have legs.
No,
I don't think so.
Maybe not, and maybe it might be like Blade Runner. 20 years down the line,
it might
become
find
a cult classic.
It might find its audience later. Yeah. It's just right now. It's just not what we were looking for. I think maybe because we were a product of the marketing campaign and we went in expecting something else, and I like being surprised. But I want the surprise to be an elevation.
This is just our opinion on the movie Annihilation, so please leave in the comments below your interpretation of the movie, your likes, your dislikes, pros and cons, and maybe also something that we may have left out in the discussion. And Dobie, anything you'd like to say?
I just really like Natalie Portman a lot. Bang, 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 bangity bang. I said a bang, bang, bangity bang, 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 bangity bang.